Well, we are going through a 10-part exhortation series on the Ten Commandments. Last week, we were exhorted from the first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." Today it is the second commandment, which reads like this: "You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments." Now, what do you think the difference is between that commandment and the first one? You shall have no other gods before me. They sound pretty similar. I mean, don't have other gods before me. And then, don't make idols, which are other gods. So it might seem a little redundant, but I think we get some clarity just 12 chapters later when, you might remember, Moses has gone up Mount Sinai. He's meeting with God to learn how to worship God. How do you build a tabernacle? And he's up there for 40 days. And in the meantime, the people of Israel at the base of the mountain are getting impatient. They want to worship God. And so they ask Aaron, make us gods. And so he takes their gold and their earrings and he throws it into a fire. And it says that he fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. I mean, this commandment was just given, and then they're already doing this. He makes a golden calf. But this is what's interesting. It says that Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord, Yahweh." Aaron says, tomorrow's going to be a feast, not to Baal, not to some false god, but to Yahweh, the one who brought him out of Egypt, the one true God. So at least in Aaron's mind, he wasn't going to a different god. He was accommodating, helping the people worship the one true God through an image, rather than waiting for Moses to come down to tell them how to worship God. So the first commandment you can think of, it tells you who to worship. You worship God alone. This second one, how to worship. You do not worship God through man-made images. You do not bow to them or serve them, even if you think that you're trying to worship the God of the Bible. Even if you think this will help me worship him, no man-made images. It's because it robs God of his glory. It robs him of his glory. Romans 1 tells us that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against men who exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images. It robs God of his glory and it makes him jealous. That's what we read about here. He says, "For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God." That's why you don't make idols. You'll rob God of his glory and he will be jealous, as he should be, just as it's a good jealousy. It would be a good husband who's jealous of his wife if she was with another man. He'd be a bad husband if you're not jealous. So we may think that our recrafting of God is going to help us worship him, and God says no, it will not. It's guaranteed to fail. It will be blasphemous. Here's a quote from Philip Ryken and Kent Hughes in their book, Exodus, Saved for God's Glory. They say, "This was the problem with idolatry all along. It created a false image of God that was inadequate to his deity and unworthy of his majesty. An idol makes the infinite God finite, the invisible God visible, the living God dead. Thus, the whole idea of idolatry rests on the absurdity of human beings trying to make their own image of God." The absurdity of human beings trying to make their own image of God. And we provoke God to jealousy when we worship him after our own design rather than his revealed word. And it is God's prerogative to tell us how to worship him. Right? It's God's prerogative to actually make his images here on earth, which he did, but it's not dead things. It is man made in the image of God. God has that prerogative. And it's his prerogative to fulfill this second commandment when he sends his son, who is the image of the invisible God. But we are not allowed to do that. We will make horrible, twisted images. Even if we think it's the best thing we can make, it will not represent him adequately. It will not be worthy of his majesty. So what does that mean for us? How does this apply to us? Well, I have three quick areas. One, this is not a prohibition against artwork. Okay, God commissions that in the Word. Commemorative, decorative, making things beautiful, yes. Teaching, yes, that is a great thing. We have things like the Jesus Storybook Bible, or maybe you've seen The Passion or The Chosen. It's a pretty common one right now. Images of Jesus. The danger there, they can be good, they can be teaching, but the danger is when it starts to craft an image in our mind more shaped by that actor in that movie or that thing rather than the authorized portrait of Jesus that we have. So if you're going to watch those things, I would just caution you, just be careful. Like, watch it, learn, but spend just as much or more time in the Gospels to make sure you're shaped by the true Jesus, the true portrait of Christ. That's one. Another is, I don't know if anybody here is ever tempted to go to maybe the Orthodox Church or Roman Catholic Church, where they have icons, and it is expected of you to bow and to venerate and to kiss and to have an affection for these images that are you're supposed to go through them to God, supposed to aid in your worship. I would say run. It robs God of his glory. He is jealous. It might make them feel more worshipful, but that doesn't matter. Like the golden calf might have helped them feel more worshipful at the base of the mountain. It was idolatry, and it robbed God of his glory. But finally, I think for us, maybe the most pressing example is when we craft God differently in our own mind, and we choose to worship him for some of his attributes rather than others. We reshape him to be more accommodating to our desires. I want a God of love. I don't like a God of wrath. I like to think of God as, fill it in, like, is it shaped by the Word? I like to think of God, I don't like to think of him as an all-sovereign God who chooses and elects a certain people, or a God who's jealous for his glory. When we hear that, I like to think of God as, get ready for a breaking of the second commandment. Unless it's shaped by the Word, is a breaking of the second commandment. So how have you carved an image of God to your own liking, in your own mind, instead of going to his revealing Word? And this reminds us of our need to confess.